Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today I have Sarah Whitney on the show. Sarah is the dynamic violinist of the group Sybarite 5, as well as a blogger and founder of her own concert series, Beyond the Notes. Sarah has created a varied career as a freelancer that started by playing in a musician-founded group, which quite frankly is very unusual. On the show, she shares what that was like taking a huge leap of faith with an ensemble just starting out and moving to New York for the ensemble as a new musician in the freelance scene in New York. She talks about how her career has changed over the course of the last 10 years and her discovery that even as a musician creating as individual a career as she has created, she still needed to evolve and continue to grow and create, specifically something she created. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Fix Music for being a sponsor of Crushing Classical Podcast. FixMusic.com is your online resource for high-quality sheet music at great prices. Check out their latest offerings like hard-to-get music and frequently backordered parts. Fix also offers unique solutions for teachers and schools buying music. Whether you have a large private teaching studio or you run a music program, Fix has a solution for you. Contact them through their website for more information. Fix now offers free shipping on all domestic orders. Also, remember to use the special discount link in the show notes and get 10% off your order. Let's get started. Hey, Sarah, welcome to Crushing Classical. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy.
So happy to have you here. So I discovered you when I was doing research, just trying to find some people to interview and just to see what's going on out there in the world of music, like that I didn't know about because I was in my little orchestra world, not knowing that people do other things than that. And I discovered Sybarite 5, the group that you play with. And so can you tell me, well, we're going to go into all of that, like how you started playing that with them and everything. But before we get started with that, can you just tell me a little bit about like your career, your chosen career path when you were, when you were deciding what you wanted to do? Did you always know you wanted to do something alternative, or did you think you were going to do the traditional orchestra job path?
I think I actually, for many years, thought I would do the traditional orchestra path.
Uh-huh.
I went to, the University of Michigan for undergrad and then Cleveland Institute of Music for graduate school, which were both relatively, classical schools. And I kind of went into those degrees thinking, yep, this is what I'm going to do. Nobody really told me I could do anything else. So, and for many years, I really thought that's what I was going to do. But there was actually a time when I realized that that was not what I wanted to do. All throughout my schooling, I did a lot of pickup orchestras. I did a lot of gigs. So I was kind of working a lot throughout my training. And I remember one summer I was at the Music Academy of the West, and we had a lot of orchestra there. And I remember being in orchestra, and there had just been so many hours of orchestra. And I had this realization that I actually didn't want to be in an orchestra. I think it had to do with partly, I think I was in a section and I realized that I maybe wanted to have a little bit more creative control in my career and what I was doing. And I had done a lot of orchestra and I just wasn't as excited about it. And I remember kind of coming to that realization that maybe orchestra isn't for me, but I had no idea what I was going to do then.
Right.
So,
That must be a scary, especially because I know growing up, like that was the option. You're going to an orchestra.
yeah, totally.
If you don't want to
Yeah,
do that, like I remember having friends say, I'm not sure I want to play an orchestra. And it was almost like, do not compute. Like that
yeah.
does not compute. I don't know what you'll do anyway instead. So was it scary when you realized that? Were you like, uh-oh, I'm screwed?
I don't know. Actually, no, it wasn't scary. I think in some ways it was actually a relief.
Okay.
Um, because I guess I was very comfortable with that realization. Like it made a lot of sense to me.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was kind of excited about exploring the possibilities. And I was still in school, so I wasn't, I still had the safety net of being in school and having some time to kind of figure out what I was going to do.
Uh-huh.
So I don't remember it being scary, but yeah, I mean, I feel like as I was figuring out what I wanted to do in my career, I had a better idea of what I didn't want to do much more than what I wanted to
And
do.
sometimes that really works, right? You just,
Yeah.
the list of what you definitely know you don't want to do, just helps you get to where what you do want to do. So when you
Yeah.
were since when you had this realization, did that sort of guide you for some of the things that you chose to study in college? Like I know you had mentioned to me that you did some other alternative genre type studies like jazz and everything. You could tell me a little bit about that. But like did that kind of guide you once you realized that? Were you like, I better start, or was that just out of an interest?
I think it was actually a little bit the other way around.
Okay.
Um, I remember in my undergrad, I took a Jazz 101 class, and this was my senior year, and it was kind of on a whim. I needed to fill some credits, and a friend and I just decided, sure, that looks fun. We can do it together. Like, we're seniors, like, whatever. Let's just, it's our last year.
Yeah.
And so we did that class, and it was, I think now I can see it as probably one of the most valuable things I did for my career, learning how to improvise and, having that education. And I think it kind of blew my mind. I was really fascinated with the process and what I was able to do. I mean, being a classical musician, I think I had no idea that I could make something up. I'd spent my whole life recreating things that other people had written,
Yeah.
and kind of, used to that process. And I was very comfortable with that. So the idea of making something up on my own was terrifying. But the class was really amazing, and I was thrown into this kind of like, go for it. You can do it. Here's the process. Here's baby steps that you can take in order to learn this. And I was completely fascinated. And so I think that I started to have those interests, and I started to explore the jazz world a little bit more. I attended Mark O'Connor Fiddle Camp because I was interested. And so I think I was already exploring other things. And I think that also contributed to my decision about not being in orchestra, because I realized that I had all these other interests,
Right.
that I really wanted to pursue that wouldn't be in orchestra. I wouldn't be able to improvise in orchestra.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did you ever have teachers who were like, "Hey, maybe you should check out this," or it was just,
Yeah.
You did?
Definitely. I definitely did. When I was at Cleveland, Paul Cantor was my teacher, and he was an unbelievable mentor. He really supported like my crazy endeavors and interests. And he didn't necessarily always know like what to tell me to do. Like he wasn't like, oh, you should do this or that, but he would just bring me things. Like he'd say, I heard about this. What do you think? I heard about this. Don't know if it interests you. So he was like, and some of them were ideas I was interested in, some of them weren't. But he was, kind of exploring with me. And that was really inspiring. And he was very supportive of it. And, in my graduate studies, I did all sorts of weird things. I was constantly trying to discover new repertoire. That's when I remember discovering Piazzolla at Cleveland and becoming wildly obsessed, and just like listening to that music and being like, I can play this on the violin. That's the coolest thing in the entire world. And other composers too, but I just started seeking this stuff out. I would go to the CIM library. I would just like look for all these weird composers. And I was fascinated with things that kind of weren't discovered or not done all that much. And so I was playing, I did Piazzolla on my recitals. I did some jazz tunes on a recital. And I kind of was really kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, you
already.
had mentioned when we talked that
Yeah.
that you did some pretty wacky recitals. I think that's cool because that's the time to really explore. I mean, I remember I had a good friend who did stuff like that, and I was like, I enjoyed his recital so much, and then I was like, gee, I didn't know you could do something like that at a
Yeah.
recital. Mine was so just Beethoven, Mozart, So that's
Yeah.
neat that you did
I
that.
had a lot of freedom with my recital programming, and Mr. Cantor was so supportive of that. And yeah, and I just kind of, I guess in my grad school I did I think I did 5 recitals. Did 4 years of grad school. So I think the first recitals were much more traditional. And then like by like 3 and 4 and 5, I was like, I can change it up. Let's get crazy. And so I did.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
so take me to like you're realizing this, you're sort of experimenting in your recitals, but when do you get to that point where you're actually doing this stuff for a career? Like how did it bridge over to getting paid and getting into Sybarite and stuff? Sybarite.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it was my last summer before, the summer before my last year of school. And I went to Aspen, and there, that's where I met Sybarite, essentially. I was just, there as any other normal student. And so Sybarite would play on a street corner in Aspen, a very famous street corner, and kind of, I guess we would open our case, and also the concerts were sponsored by some stores locally that kind of surrounded the street corner, and it was just a gig. And the history of Sybarite, actually, in a nutshell, is that Louis Levitt, the bass player, started the group at Aspen many years before I ever met him, purely just busking. He wanted to play chamber music. He got his friends together. They just opened their case for money on the street and just played. Over the years, it developed into an actual gig where we got paid a little bit of money. And Louis, I guess, needed a violinist for this gig and went to Mr. Cantor and said, do you have any recommendations? They played all different types of repertoire, and this basically stemmed from, on the streets of Aspen. It's really easy to see what pieces people like and what they don't, because either they'll stay and listen or they'll walk away.
Right.
And so Louis had kind of developed a really eclectic repertoire, everything from, classical stuff to rock and roll, Led Zeppelin, tango. And he found that a lot of the alternative stuff really worked. And so when he went to Mr. Cantor, he said, I need someone who can be versatile, who can do all different types of things. And Mr. Cantor said, call Sarah. So I just got called for the gig, and I was thrilled to have a gig as a, as a poor student, I suppose. Yeah. And that's where I met Louis. And it was just a really fun, I had a blast doing it. It was really great. At first, I didn't really think it was anything more than a summer gig. And then
so it was like a weekly, was it a weekly?
I think it was a couple nights a week.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, just while I was a student at the festival. And then I learned that actually Sybarite had done a few like more formal concerts over the years in New York. Most of the people that had done the gig were in New York, and they had put together a few concerts. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, but it still didn't really seem like real to me, because I was just the guest doing this gig in the summer. And also it wasn't a very, they had a roster. So there was like 12 to 13 people on the roster, and they would kind of pull people together, do concerts just as a fun thing. Mm-hmm. And so it was after, during my last year of school, when I got a call from one of the violinists in Sybarite. And it turns out that she and Louis had decided that they wanted to actually move forward and try and make this group a professional chamber ensemble. And they wanted to get rid of the roster and find 5 people who would commit and try building this ensemble, up. And so I got the call, and they said, what are you doing after you graduate? And I said, I don't know. No idea. They said, why don't you move to New York and help us build up Sybarite and put all your time into something that probably won't make you much money at first. And I said, sounds great. Let's do it.
What a sell.
Yeah, I said, great. Sure, I'll move to the most expensive city in the world and dedicate my time. So that's actually what got me to New York and the beginning of my career with Sybarite.
That's so great. I love the story. So really going to, I know a lot of people say, because I've argued like music school, it's so expensive. Half the stuff you could learn online, but not including the playing and the teaching, the private lessons. But I'm like, there's something missing here. And I've argued that, but a lot of people say, but the networking. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I didn't work with any players that I know from school or summer festivals, but in this case you did. So
yep. I think, I hear you on that argument, but I think that the people you meet in school will be the colleagues for the rest of your life. Yeah. And, of course, I met Sybarite at a festival, but also other colleagues that I know from either school or other festivals, I'm constantly running into people that I know from those things. And I think it's a really important place to meet and network with people. And I think also people that you go to school with, in my case, I found that you have kind of like a connection. I mean, you have a common, connection. Even if you weren't really great friends when you were in school, you have this common connection that you were both at whatever university. And it makes it easier to approach them if you realize they're doing something cool, or maybe that person was a performance major and now they're in PR or doing something else, being able to approach them and say, hey, can I get advice? Or, it's a connection that I've found really helpful in a lot of different ways.
That's true. And maybe it's smart to approach it approach school and festivals just with that in the back of your mind. Like,
Yeah.
thinking ahead, just like, I'm going to be social. I'm going to make sure that
Yep.
I meet people, not because you think you could get something from them later, but just as a way to, hey, there's all these people who kind of want to do similar things right now together in the same place. I got to get to know them. So
Yeah.
that's really wise, I
And
think.
I think
That
also something that I always tell students that I meet today, all these students around you will be your colleagues, in the real world. And also just remembering that. So like everything you do in school, like, how you interact with these people, how you are, like it really matters in school. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff matters. And so it's not just that, oh, when I get out of school, okay, then I have to really start thinking about, how the colleagues, it's all connected. So just to remember that too, that
Yeah.
these people are going to be the people you're working with in your career. It's important.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
stay on good terms.
Yeah. Be a good human, right?
Yes.
So I have a kind of, I don't know if this is kind of a random question, but do you think that people, when you decided to move to New York and you were like, hey, maybe your family or friends or colleagues or teachers, when you told them that you were doing this thing, was anyone like, ugh, why aren't you going to be in an orchestra? Why aren't you trying for a job that's more secure, that you can make a salary? Like, were people judgmental, or did you experience any that kind of, I don't know, feedback from people at all when you chose that route instead of the conventional route?
You know what? I don't think I got a ton of negative feedback from people. I think during my schooling, because of all my other interests, I had kind of gotten used to maybe going against the grain a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and especially at CIM, I remember I took guitar lessons from a professor there. I studied big band arranging at the university across the street. And so I was already kind of like doing things that were a little weird or not along the traditional path.
Hmm.
So I don't think that the move to New York, like either I was already known for doing that, so people weren't surprised. But I didn't get too much feedback. And I mentioned the support from my teacher. I think that was really, really huge for me
Yeah.
to have my teacher behind me saying, yes, this is great. Like explore, go do this. I think that was really huge. And I think also one thing that I always kept in mind was I could always stand behind what I was doing because I was confident that I could maintain a high level, like the level that I wanted to maintain, no matter what I was doing, like whether I was doing weird, like people talk about like, selling out or whatever. And if you're doing like cover songs or whatever, or different things that aren't traditional, but I always kind of stood by this idea that if I could stand behind the level of the playing, like which I was in control of, and I would do that, I felt okay with it, and I was fine, with that. And so I think that also kind of carried me through a lot of that because I knew what I was capable of, and if I
Hmm.
was confident with how well I was playing, then great. Like if I was doing the best I could, then who cares what other people think? Because so
That's
yeah.
awesome. So,
And it is scary, and it was scary, but I think, I was always by nature very curious about things, and that like led me in a lot of different directions.
yeah.
And I think that, I was able to explore things, and yeah, I don't know, it's hard to think about why I was that way, but it really helped me. It
That's
benefited me
good.
a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
how long did it take? Well, is Sybarite? I know that you do other things, and we'll go into
Hmm.
those things too. Did it come to a point where Sybarite was a full time income for you? Like it
Hmm.
came, like over time, was it okay? This is paying me enough to live in New York, or was it more like kind of a base that you had to keep supplementing other gigs and other jobs.
It was definitely a base. It still is. I mean,
Hmm.
we're I guess you could define full-time touring ensemble. I mean, we're a, professional ensemble. We're very busy, but it's still not a full-time job as like financially, I
Uh-huh.
couldn't only do Sybarite.
Right.
So from the very beginning, I've done a ton of other things.
Hmm.
And I actually think that it makes me a better musician for doing other things too.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Sybarite is an incredible ensemble. We've done some incredible things. I get to play with four, talented, amazing musicians, which is really incredible. But I think all the other things I've done, the other things I've explored, the other people I collaborate with they actually make me a better musician. And then especially when I go back to Sybarite, like I have more to offer. And I think it's important that I'm doing a lot of other things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So when you moved to New York, what was it like to break into that scene? Because, hi, I'm here, I'm in New York.
Yeah.
So was a
Yeah.
lot of musicians. It's hard to just move to a city. I remember doing that in Chicago, and it was like, okay, I'm a super tiny fish here.
Yep. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't. But I had Sybarite. I mean, Sybarite's what got me to New York, and we didn't have very many gigs that first year at all. I mean, we were probably self-producing all of them, if not, I can't remember exactly.
Hmm.
But they were really helpful in getting me work, my colleagues in Sybarite, because they knew I was new. So that was good. But also, I think I did 4 years of grad school. And so by the time I got to New York, I knew a ton of people here that had either, moved here after undergrad or moved here after master's, or I'd met at summer festivals. And I had a lot of free time because I wasn't working very much. But I just kind of started reaching out to people. I would, go to people's shows and just kind of, I was running into people I knew all the time, whether I was actually going out to coffee with them or going to see them play, and just kind of catching up with people, basically not necessarily with the intention of networking. I didn't really realize what I was doing,
Hmm.
but I just wanted to see them. I realized people are here and say, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in 4 years.
Yeah.
How are you? And so I started doing that. And then also, if I would go to a show or wherever, I would inevitably meet new people. And I would always come home and find them on Facebook. And I would just send a little message that said, hey, it was great to meet you. I'm new in the city. If you ever need a violinist, let me know. And I just did that. I don't, I'm not sure like where that came from, but I just realized I wanted to stay in touch with people, and Facebook was a really great way to do it.
Hmm.
And that really helped me. And people really reached out. I think in New York, and maybe any big city, but when you meet someone who's new, who you get along with or whatever, like you want to help. I mean, we all get asked to recommend people all the time.
Mm.
And it's a very out of sight, out of mind city. Like if I'm seeing someone a lot, they come to mind if someone says, hey, I need a violinist. If I'm not seeing them, then I don't think of them right away.
Right.
So I just kind of, I just started, going to things, meeting people, and keeping track of them.
Yeah, that's smart. And reaching out on Facebook, not being shy for friending people. Just,
Yeah.
hey, I just met you.
Yeah, and I think that like people, like I don't know, people. I've worked with people who say they don't want to reach out, they don't want to bother people. But I think like, if you're getting a friendly message, especially if you can reference your conversation, or like I loved your show, or I thought what you did was really cool, or you know what I mean? Like people love that. You can't deny that. We all love getting a message of someone, and it's also someone taking the time to make that connection, which I think is really valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like that's good advice for someone moving to New York now. Like
Definitely.
get out there, go to shows,
just
go
show
to
your
concerts.
face, show your face, and let people know you're new, and just and the thing is, I've had people say to me, oh well, Sarah, you're just really social, so you're just good at that, like you just I'm shy, I'm not like that. But I think that I don't know, I kind of I don't really think that it's just that you're social or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to network or whatever, I mean, you can there's tools you can learn, or or like you can have questions in your back pocket to ask people, or you know what I mean? Like it's just like you can practice these things. And it's not that you have to be a social butterfly, but when you go to shows, making sure you're meeting people, how to introduce yourself to someone so you're comfortable, and just like have these tools. I mean, we can practice that stuff just like we practice our instruments. There's ways to learn these things.
That's great advice. That's a really great point. You have to practice. I mean, I remember going to concerts and feeling kind of awkward waiting for people to come out from backstage, like, I'm a groupie, I'm waiting. But then when they come out, they're always really happy to see you. They want to know that you were there at your show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, it can be as simple as, hi, my name's Sarah. I loved your show. I play the violin. I think I love this piece. There's something, like it
Yeah,
can be simple. It doesn't have to be like a mind-blowing realization about what they did. It can be really, really simple.
exactly.
And yeah.
Do you have people calling you up and say, "Hey, can I play for you? I'm new in town." Does anyone ever do that?
Um, I guess I haven't. I'm not sure if play for me, but I've had people that want to take me out for coffee. I've had
Mm-hmm.
people that say, you know, either they just want to pick my brain about my career, or I remember I have had a few people that have said, you're actually when I was new, I think maybe after a couple of years, I had a couple of people reach out, say, hey, you've only been here for 2 years. You're so busy. You're doing
Mm-hmm.
so many things. How did you do that? Um, but I've also had, people that have come into town that want to just go out or catch up. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
So what point did you decide, hey, I want to start doing some other stuff like that you
Hmm.
founded, that you created?
Yeah, I think so I've been in Sybarite for how many years now? Coming up on 9, I think. And you know, it's been an incredible journey, and we're doing some incredible things. I mean, we've gone from, 2 concerts a year to I don't know how many concerts, but we're on the road about 30 to 40% of the year.
Wow.
And it's a really huge part of my career. I think a couple years ago, a lot of things happened in my life, actually. I went through some injuries. I went through some kind of like a darker phase in my life where I really was kind of forced to think about my career and my life in a different way. And I think, in hindsight, I'm actually really grateful for that experience. It taught me a lot about where I am now, what I want to be doing. And I loved Sybarite, but I kind of, I realized that Sybarite was kind of the only artistic like outlet I had. And I wanted to kind of develop my own projects, like, and I guess, yeah, I mean, I wanted to be known as more than just Sarah, the violinist in Sybarite 5. I had
Yeah,
this
and
desire to kind of be a little bit independent.
that's so interesting. I want to hear more about that, but I have to interject because it's so funny. I think no matter what you do, whether it's you land a spot in the Chicago Symphony or in whatever orchestra or a
Yeah.
smaller orchestra, there's always going to be, a situation where you're like, is this all there is for me? Is this
Yeah.
all I am going to do?
Yeah. And I think, you know, in some ways, on paper, my life looked like it was perfect. I was in a professional chamber music group. We had won Concert Artist Guild. We had management. We were touring the country,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of amazing things happening. But something was missing for me. I was excited, but I wasn't completely like there was still something missing, and it kind of took me a minute to figure out what that was. And I think ultimately it was that I wanted my own project. Like I wanted something that was completely mine, and
Uh-huh.
I wanted to do that. And so that's kind of what kind of led me to do my other projects. And as I mentioned earlier, I think that all the other things I do help me in Sybarite. They make me a
Yeah.
better person in Sybarite. They make me a better player in Sybarite. And so I think that was what I needed. And so yeah, it
Right. It's
was
like if you eat the
yeah.
same meal, even if it's healthy, and you eat it every single day,
Yeah.
you know, you get sick of sushi if you eat it only every day,
Right.
even if it's made by the best sushi maker in the world. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. Because I think it's easy to go, oh, I'm in an orchestra, so I don't have my own voice. What if I had a career like Sarah's? My life would be made in the
Hmm.
shade because I would be in a chamber group that tours, and that's incredible. But the truth of the matter is, anything can be incredible as long as you're feeding yourself on all levels. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
point of it, like you have
Totally.
something for yourself. You have something,
Hmm.
your own voice that you're getting out into the world. So what did
Exactly.
so what did you do first?
What did I do first? That's a good question. Um, well, I think I just started kind of paying a little bit more attention to things that I loved, and what really made me excited. I mean, Sybarite was one of them, and it's a really incredible group that I'm part of. But I started paying attention to what other types of projects. I remember I think I did a solo recital 4 or 5 years
Okay.
ago, where I just, I booked a hall in my hometown and at Concord, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And I had done concerts there throughout the years, and I knew I had an audience that would show up, and and I kind of was like, all right, I'm going to do this concert, and I picked the repertoire. I kind of just, it was completely mine. I mean, literally solo violin for an entire concert, which was quite an undertaking, but
Wow.
it was 100%
But did
mine.
that help you break out of your kind of funk? I'm just putting words in your mouth by saying that
Yeah,
it was a
no, it totally
funk,
was a
but
fun.
but like cuz a lot of times it's hard to snap out of that and do something, you know?
Yeah.
It's easy to go, "Oh, you know, this is what I'm doing and I wish I had this or that," and not do something. So like you just
Yeah.
have to kind of motivate yourself off the, you know, off the couch. I shouldn't say that because I mean I know you were super busy. You weren't
Yeah.
just on the couch, but like you have to motivate yourself to create something and do something, and like you said, a solo violin with nothing else, that's a lot of work. So that's cool that
I wish
you
someone
went
had told
for
me that
it.
before I did it. I didn't know how much work it would be. But no, you're exactly right. I think, like, I think I was getting, like, everyone was telling me that my life was so great,
Yeah.
like, you're living the dream. You're living the dream. And it was just like, it was weird. And there was definitely a time where I kind of like, I like sat in that for a while, and I was like, everyone's telling me my life is so great. What's wrong with me? Why,
Uh-huh.
like, why am I not just, thriving in every way? But then, yeah, I guess I started finding other like other things to do. And then this recital that I did, and kind of, and also, coming out of my injury, I think I also had some confidence, some building to
What
do,
happened? Did you
like,
did you just get some hand stuff going on?
yeah, I had an overuse injury. It actually was kind of from using the computer. I was arranging some music for
Mm.
Sybarite, actually, and just kind of went all in, spent like hours and hours and hours in a day, and just kind of ignored signs of pain, and really put myself over the edge. I'd had injuries over the years, and I was a little overconfident about how I could manage my body and pain.
Mm.
And it was also a combination. I think when I was first in New York, I was so fascinated with everything that was going around me. I wasn't really practicing, and I wasn't maintaining my technique. So I think the combination of performing a lot without maintaining my technique, and then the overuse of the computer, just kind of like put my hands in like a really bad place.
Hmm.
And I was kind of forced to really like abruptly stop a lot of things, including like, like you think about your hands, you use them for everything. Obviously my instrument, but writing emails, using the computer, everyday things from like washing the dishes to everything. And so it like completely, my life came to kind of a grinding halt, and I really had to look at things. Um, and, um, and so, throughout that process, I, I definitely, had to kind of do some soul searching, and I lost some confidence with my playing. Everything felt different. I had to
Hmm.
change my technique. It was like something I've been doing for, 25 years or 6 years or whatever, all of a sudden was different.
Yeah.
That's really scary. And it was an insane few years. But I think that, how did we get here? We were talking about,
You mentioned that you were doing the solo concert,
oh, that's right.
but
And
then
building the confidence. Yeah, yeah.
and building up your confidence again. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me also, kind of having my own project, something that I was completely in control of. And it was
Yes.
scary, but it was kind of me like getting out there and performing in other ways, like especially in a solo recital, which I didn't do for many years during that time. I was still playing with Sybarite, but
Hmm.
I largely had canceled almost everything else except for Sybarite, and was
Mm.
doing that, which was really challenging because I was also kind of in the spotlight with them, not feeling my best. But like I said, like I learned so much from that experience, and I think that I maintained the curiosity of like trying new things, and I kind of persisted, and I think that got me through.
Right. That's great. So then what happened next? I know um you have a couple of your own projects now.
I do. I have a lot of projects.
So let's hear
Well,
about them.
so that concert, the violin, I called it Violin for One. I think I got interested in presenting concerts in my hometown. As I mentioned, I had this audience who would watch me grow up. I had been performing in Concord for years, and I knew I had this audience that I could definitely fill a house pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember there's a piece that I really wanted to play with, who's a viola, right? We really wanted to play the Martineau madrigals for violin and viola. And so I said, all right, well, let's schedule a concert. You know, I know, like, because of the recital I had done, I was like, I can book this cool art gallery in Concord. I know we can sell out the tickets. We can make this much money. Like, it was like a very easy model. And I said, sure, let's just do it. And we did that. But I remember actually, right before, like a month before the concert, I said, you know what if I give this concert like a name, like a title, you know, and like maybe I can make a brand, like instead of people just being like, oh, Sarah Whitney's doing something cool, maybe I can give it a name, and actually like it'll be something that happens regularly that people can get used to hearing about. So I came up with this idea of a concert called Beyond the Notes, where the audience can kind of get to know the performer beyond what can be read in their bios. And it was a standard concert by, you know, like in many ways it was like two halves. We did a combination of solos and duos, which was always part of the plan. But when everyone arrived at the concert, they were handed a note card with their program. They had a chance to write down a question and were invited to submit it at intermission. And then throughout the second half, we pulled the questions out at random and answered them. And this was like such an experiment. I mean, I think I thought of this concept probably like 3 weeks before the concert. Like, I just was like, let's do something different, cool. Like, you know, and that's what started. And now I have a concert series called Beyond the Notes.
That's so great.
And I'm in my, let's see, we just did our 4th season. It's an annual concert right now, but I have a series in Concord. So that's been a really amazing project.
Yeah. So you mentioned
completely mine.
That's so great. And you mentioned a brand, and I wonder, did having played with a group that really has a brand, do you think that informed you for that? Like, you were like, I'm not just going to haphazardly put something on and not give it a name, and something that people can grab onto and go, oh, I go to that thing and it's called this, and I follow it here, and I know what's happening next, kind of thing.
Definitely. I learned so much in Sybarite about the whole branding and marketing aspect. Lewis, the bass player, has always had a really incredible sense for that kind of stuff. And, you know, when we were earlier in the ensemble, I remember he would always pay such close detail or attention to the details of, what do our flyers look like? Do our business cards match our flyers? Do our flyers match our website? Do our pictures match how we look on stage? And it was like intense, you know, kind of like he was like looking at everything with a microscope. And sometimes it was like, Lewis, does it really, like, does it really matter? Like, we're, you know, we have other things to talk about. But, you know, I learned so much from that, and I'm so glad he did that. And I think it really helped Sybarite and our brand for sure, and how clear we were with who we are and what we did. And I learned a ton from that. So definitely. And that, you know, I kind of had experienced that with Sybarite and seen how it had worked and helped us.
Yeah.
And that really helped me with the idea of, you know, giving something to people that they recognize. If I have a series with a name and a logo and a look, you know, it's not just like, oh, Sarah Whitney's doing something. It's like, oh, they recognize it. And what do they say? Like, you have to see something 7 times in order to actually remember it.
Yeah, I've heard
You know,
that.
it's like the idea that, like, you just have to, like, have a consistent picture or logo or whatever that just people see over and over again.
Yeah, and how does social media play into that? I'm sure there's some of that going on in Sybarite, and then, like, what about Beyond the Notes? Do you guys do a lot on social media, or?
Well, I'm trying to do more. Yes, we are on social media. We have a Facebook page. I have a website. I actually recently did an entire rebranding for my series. And yeah, I mean,
what does that mean? What did you do to rebrand?
So when I first started the series, I kind of picked a font and just kind of made a program that looked pretty. And then when I wanted to make a flyer, I wanted to make little postcards to give to people. And so I knew a friend who did some graphic design. I said, hey, can you design this postcard for me? Here's a picture. Here's what it's called. So he kind of made it look really nice. But I wasn't able to take that look and put it on the website because everything was separate. And so when I did a rebranding, I hired someone, a guy named Ho-Jun Kim, who's incredible. He was a musician in New York, and now he does marketing and branding, also with other music groups. So he had a really good understanding of the industry. But he took everything and made it the same. So he said, all right, we're going to give you a logo that's going to be on your website, on your flyers, on your program, on your business card, on everything. And the look is all cohesive. Like everything you see with Beyond the Notes now all looks the same. And so he did that, and we also worked on like my tagline and
Cool.
different platforms and my newsletter platform. Like everything all looks the same, and he kind of went in and did that.
And did he suggest other things like, oh, you should do YouTube? Or, I mean, I don't know if I just use
Yeah,
that as an.
yep. I have a YouTube channel now, actually,
Oh,
because of him. Yeah,
that's cool. He
and he
sounds like
also
a great
made,
resource. I'm gonna get his
yeah,
information and put it in the show notes because.
definitely. Hojun Kim Images, I think, is his company name, but
Okay.
he's amazing, and he works with other groups too. Um, yeah, and we also made promo videos. He also does video and photography.
Ooh.
So we
So
made
it's like
promo
the whole
videos that
nine
also
yards.
matched.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you
I
gotta.
just needed like I needed my website to be like a one-stop shop where people could go and know exactly what it was, and then everything else they saw around it. Like say they went to the website, saw that, and then maybe saw an ad somewhere, or
Yeah.
vice versa. If they saw an ad in the paper or wherever, then they went to my website. It was like all the same thing, and they knew
Yeah.
it all looked the same, and they knew what it was, and that's why I did that, which was incredible.
That's great. And it sounds, I
Yeah,
mean, I think we all, now there's people do it so much that we kind of, as consumers, take it for granted that something has to have
yeah.
a video and you have to be able to find and hear an example of it and, stream it or
Well,
whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, if it's not there, you're like, wait, where is that person?
exactly.
I
And I
was
think
looking
like,
online yesterday. You know how there's a sidebar thing on Facebook, and you're like, this page also likes these people, and you end
right,
up kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
clicking. And I clicked on an orchestra, and it was small. You could tell it was really small, and they'd been in existence for like maybe 10 years or something in a
Yeah.
small town. But they were making it happen, and it was their Facebook page. And I was looking around, and there was pictures of the conductor, but it didn't like say the conductor's name, and then it like mentioned that conductor, but like in the about section, but didn't say it was the conductor, but they said his name. So I'm like, well, is he the founder or the conductor or what? So then I was
Huh.
like,
Yeah.
maybe he has a Facebook page. Didn't have a Facebook page. I'm like, this is this is necessary.
Yeah. Totally.
You have somebody just because stuff gets suggested to you on Facebook. If you start clicking, you should be able to get all the information. Oh, there's a YouTube. Oh,
Yep.
there's a newsletter I can sign up for. Like everything needs to be integrated because you've got that 1 second where someone randomly sees it. You
Yep.
know.
Well, I tell people this all the time. I mean, like, you have to think about what the consumer wants. Like, I mean,
Yep.
what do people need to know? Like you said, if you discover something on a whim or whatever, what are people going to do? What's the first thing people are going to do when they meet you? Either they're going to look you up on Facebook or they're going to Google you.
Yes.
Right. And so, like, what do you want them to know? Or if I tell someone about my series, what are they going to do? They're going to Google it,
Yeah.
And so if someone's looking for something, what do they need? They want to know what it is. They want to know, like, if they're looking for a player, they want to know what you sound like.
Yep.
And, like, you have to think about, like, why these things are necessary. It's not just, oh, we should have them. What function do they serve?
Yeah.
And, like, if someone's looking to hire you or come to your concert, what's going to make them want to do that? If they don't know what it is, like, if they don't know what the concept is, I mean, for me, that's what I struggled with Beyond the Notes. I was so clear in my head what it was. I knew
Yeah.
exactly what we did. I knew why it was cool. I knew why people should come. But people that I couldn't have a conversation with, how
Exactly.
could they learn that? So, that's when, the promo video came, was really important. And it's like, I invested in it. This was not
That was my
something
next
I
question. I was
did
like,
with my iPhone, with my friends.
Yeah.
He's a professional. He has a degree in, I think it's business marketing or something. So he had an angle of like, here's what you need to say. Here's the order you need to say it. Here's, and I think that everyone can go about it their own way, but that's what I felt comfortable doing and what I knew I needed in order to get the best product. Because if
yeah.
I spent hours and hours, editing a video myself or whatever, it's not that I couldn't do it, but it's just that
It might not be as good, and you just spend all those hours.
good, and I could spend, so much time on it.
Yeah.
And I was confident that I would have a really amazing result with him. And
So
I
did you invest your own money to do that?
I invested some of my money. Yeah, I invested my own money.
And then have you been raising money for Beyond the Notes too?
I have. I actually started a fundraising not a fundraising campaign. I started fundraising this year for the first time.
Uh-huh.
As I mentioned, like the model I had was a very easy model for me. The first venue I had was small. I knew I could sell out the tickets. I had a couple retirement homes in the area that I could bring the guests to. And so I had these kind of like things that I knew were guaranteed as far as income. So I could base my budgets on that. And it was really easy. And then I outgrew that venue and moved into a larger one my third year, which was an entirely new endeavor, a huge one, and was really like, it was a really eye-opening experience, but I realized that I needed much more than that. That model didn't work anymore. I was too big to rely on that. And so I started doing a fundraising. I sent out some email blasts and started reaching out to people. I had like a letter that I sent out to some people and just kind of raising awareness about it. I think I had never asked for money for this series. And I think in some ways, like, people didn't actually know that I needed money. So it was partially just like being okay to ask, being like, hey, like, would you be interested in supporting? And I was actually blown away at how many people donated. It was really cool. I'd always been scared to ask because I was like, what if I send out this email or I send out this announcement, these letters, and no one gives anything? That's going to make me feel terrible. But, you know, what I've learned is that people, like, you have to give people the opportunity to support you. You know, and not everyone wants to, but the people that want to support you, you have to ask them so they can support you.
Right.
You know, it's really important. Yeah.
Did you ever have conversations with people, or was it just letters and emails, or was it like, did you say, hey, Mrs. Smith, the millionaire that lives down the street from the hall, can we go out for coffee? Like, did you do that?
I haven't done that yet. I think what I've done is I'm really focusing on building relationships with people. A lot of these people in my hometown know me, and I've known for a while.
Right, you grew up there.
I grew up there, and these people have been watching me for years. And there's definitely people that, like, I can ask, as I've learned, I can say, I need support, and they're just like, yes, sure, great, here's this amount. But what I recently did, actually, was I called it the Beyond the Notes sessions. Or no, I didn't. Beyond the Notes discussions. I was in Concord, and I got together a small group of people to basically discuss Beyond the Notes and kind of get feedback from them. I also wanted to make a more personal relationship with these people. There's a lot, like, I mean, in Concord, there's a lot of people that know who I am, and I couldn't necessarily name all, like, if I met them, or I might recognize their face, but I couldn't necessarily name, like, say their name or what they do. Or so I'm trying to get better at that, build more relationships with these people. So that event was kind of an effort to, I wanted people to feel involved and known,
and actually known.
Yeah. And their voices were heard, and I could, you know, hear what they had to say. It was a group of about 12 people. And so what I'm trying to do now is build relationships with people, but also get a sense of who wants to be involved, and kind of gauge that. And then, you know, I might take steps of asking people to meet individually. But it's a lot of it is about building relationships. I think you have to be careful. You don't want to call someone up and that, you know, the millionaire down the street or whatever, and say, hey, do you want to get coffee? And show up and say, hey, I'm doing this series. Do you want to support it? You don't want to do that. I mean, the thing is, you have to, like, it's like a relationship you kind of have to build. Like, you know, you want to be sincere with the relationship you're building, because it's like people that have money get asked to donate it, get asked to, you know, all the time. Yeah. And it's not that they don't want to do it, but I think it's important. You have to make them feel involved. So ask their opinion. And one thing that I was told, if you, like, want money from someone, or advice for that matter, like, or if you want something from people, you go to them, you say, hey, I have this, you know, either I'm trying to raise money for this. Do you know anyone that could help? And, you know, you have to be careful about the ask.
Right. Yeah. Because you don't want to seem like you're using somebody. I mean, even though this is great we're talking about this, because it's uncomfortable to ask people for money unless they're your parents. And still,
definitely.
I mean, even at a certain age, you just shouldn't ask them either. You know, It's like, it's awkward. So knowing that it is, how do you go about it? Because most of the time you need to have investors or donors or something, whatever you're doing as an artist. So
yeah. And I think you just have to, like, you have to be sincere in building these relationships with people. It takes time. It does. And that's one thing that I'm really focusing on this year. And I'm going to have a fundraising event in the fall. And like, it'll be a bigger group than the one I mentioned with 12 people, but just, and you have to, like, I'll play for these people, but I want their feedback. Like, I find it really important. Like, you want to ask them, like, what do you want to see in Beyond the Notes? What, like, what instruments do you want to see brought to Concord? Like, if they're feeling involved, they're more invested. And if you're really listening, I mean, of course I can't, change everything that people suggest. I can't take everyone's suggestion, but I'm listening. I'm taking notes. I'm taking everything into account, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, when does anyone ever get asked what they think?
Exactly.
Anytime.
And I think, and even my concert series, actually, this whole concept of getting the audience more involved, allowing them or giving them a chance to ask questions, is, I think, I'm also trying to change the concert experience. This idea of the audience and the performers. In history, it's like, it's sometimes there's a big barrier. You go to a concert, you're handed a program, no one talks on stage, you don't talk to them. They're kind of these like non-human, like superstars that can do these incredible things.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really trying to change that, because I'm human. I'm just another human, and everyone, I think it's and that, I think changing that experience is really important, but also, like you said, getting people involved. Yeah. Listening to them, it's not just, oh, I'm going to present something to you. You have to deal with it.
Exactly. And imagine the word of mouth that would happen because I don't know, the person that you talked to said, you know what, Sarah, it would be really great if you brought, this and that. If you brought brass instruments, for example, or you did this or that, and then you created one of the concerts kind of on some of these people's ideas, how excited they would be. And then they would probably tell more and more people. So I think it's pretty brilliant, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And I did a survey, actually, a couple of years. I've had a survey with the program, and I've gotten some really interesting feedback about what instruments to bring. That's great. It's really, I mean, I'm a string player, so I was bringing all my close string friends. Who did I have first? Viola, cello, then I had a pianist. This last year I had a guitar player. But nice. I remember I got after one of the years of surveys, a lot of people asked for winds, and I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's a good idea. Obviously, I'm bringing all these string players. And so that's in my brain, and that is something I'm going to do in one of the next coming years because of that survey. I mean, it really was like, duh, of course. I brought all these string players.
I know, you should totally bring a horn player sometime.
Yeah, maybe I should bring a horn player.
That's so cool. I love it. I love it, and it's yours. So, I want to ask you, and you've really shown us over we've gone on a little journey here, and you've told us about how your career has changed over the last, I don't know how long you were in New York, 10 or so years.
Coming up on 10 years, actually.
Wow, that's great. 10. So how would you say, if you had to boil it down to a couple of sentences, how would you say it's evolved? Or how you've evolved as a musician, or how your career has evolved in the last 10 years? How you think about it, or just anything like that?
I think that one of the things that I think a lot about now is kind of being a little bit more in control of my career. Not a little bit more, a lot more, actually. I think we talked a little bit about the shoulds and even with the orchestra route, or things that I thought I was going to do simply because I was told that that's what I should do. Yeah. And I think, I definitely had the curiosity to look beyond that and explore things. But even, in New York, there was a lot of that, like what other people should tell me I should do, or you should do this, or you should do that, you should do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that in more recent years, I've taken a really careful look at what I really want to be doing, and just kind of learned, first of all, how to figure that out, because I think it might seem obvious, but it wasn't for me. And I think it's not obvious for many people. We can be doing something for so many years and be like, oh yeah, this is cool. But just being I was observing my life in a new way, like really paying attention to what got me excited, and I was doing so many different things, but you can, if you really observe and kind of track how your mind reacts and how your body reacts to what you're doing, I was able to learn a lot of things. I've learned since in the last 5 years or 3 years even that I love teaching. And, if like every time I do it, like with Sybarite, we do a ton of outreach on the road. We do master classes, workshop with kids, all this stuff. I love it. And sometimes it's really early in the morning. And I was always the one, at 8 a.m. classes, I would be jumping around the stage, like going crazy with these kids, or in the master classes, I get so excited, or the workshops we do. And, it is kind of funny because in many ways, it took me a little while to actually observe that. Be like, anytime teaching's involved, I just I can be I can be so tired, but I have this energy. And I would get so excited, and you can ask my Sybarite colleagues, they know it. I just get like really excited about it. And that was when I actually started observing that was so useful because I said, wow, like I should pursue this more, whether it's teaching lessons, master classes, I do career coaching now, I do workshop with students, about all sorts of things. And so I was able to kind of use that information and say, I should pursue that. I'm going to pursue this, and I'm going to figure out how. And I think, so that's something I've been doing a lot of, and in many different areas of my life. But I think this idea of just kind of going along with things. I mean, I've just like having the courage to make changes and pursue those things, I think has been a huge shift for me in the last few years. And also in the freelance world, probably in any city, I'm sure in any city, it's everything is so immediate. Like, what am I doing tomorrow? What's my gig tomorrow? What's my gig this weekend? Okay. How does my month look? Okay. But there's less thinking about like, well, where do I want to be in 5 years? Or where do I want to be a year from now? Yeah. And I feel like having the, courage to think about those things is important because it can be scary and be like, oh no, I have to day by day, but it's like, years can go by. Yeah. And then you're, either you're doing the same things or you're not happy or whatever. So I've just been trying to think about like what that's going to look like. And then I can make a plan,
Exactly. And it's what you can do each day to change the course of what's going to look like in 5 years,
Totally.
I mean, it's like just one day at a time until a year goes by. Like, for example, this podcast, like when I first started, like, I don't know, 20 people listened to it. And I had like 5 episodes. And then suddenly a year and a half goes by and I have like almost 50 people that I've interviewed. And I look back on like how my interview ability has changed and how I've tried to get better and what I've done. And like, it's just a matter of like each day doing something different. It's hard there's definitely always a struggle. Yeah. Am I doing the right thing? Do I really want to be doing this? Is there even a purpose for this? Or, all these things that you're thinking as you're just doing. And like you said, I think the number one thing that people do is they go, oh, I'm just way too busy. I have too many things to do right now this week. I have these many lessons. I have this gig. I have tomorrow I have to go out to a run out, this and that. And there's too much to do to think about what do I want in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. But you don't have to make the plan to say this is happening by definitely in 10 years this is what I'm going to have, but to just incrementally like you just showed that you did little changes that one thing led to another, and now you can look back and say, wow, I'm growing my concert series. It's getting bigger now I need to raise money. Like what started from just a solo concert to get you out of the rut of not having your own voice in your career. So
and I think like what you mentioned about like, doing little things here and there, like it can seem daunting to like, if you have a goal or like, it's hard to think about like, where do I want to be in 5 years? Cause it's like, well, who am I to like think that I could do that in 5 years? Exactly. Or whatever. But I think, one thing I've learned a lot about is this idea of like the small goals, like the little things, and it's not that you have to like say, okay, I don't know, say your goal is you want to release an album in a year or whatever. It's not that like, oh, you have to raise $10,000. Yes, you do have to do those things, but it can be like, okay, like what if I make a plan? Or like, what if I start thinking about like little things, like, like tiny little things of like, today I'm going to research, like a few people I know who've done albums, like how they do it. Or like tiny little baby steps. Like I was actually reading an article this morning they talk about, I think it's like micro steps or something where, you set small goals that you can reach, and that like you actually get like this dopamine rush of like completing something, even if it's tiny, even if it's like, okay, I'm going to add that person on Facebook. Like if it's a person that you admire, someone that's released an album or something that's doing something, I'm going to add that person on Facebook, and you just write, you make it a goal and you do it. And then the next day it's like, okay, I'm going to see like what albums have they released? I'm going to research that today. Okay. Next, whatever it is. I mean,
I totally agree with you. And I even think sometimes completing something that's even unrelated to the endeavor, like you finally organized your music, or you finally completed a thing that's been nagging at you for so long.
Yeah.
You finally renewed your passport.
Yep.
I did that finally. I had an expired passport for 5 years, and it was kind of, I'm like, I'm not going on a trip anytime soon, but it's just sort of like that thing that I haven't done in a long time. And when I finally did it, I was like, because it's a pain. You have to go to the post office, you have to talk to the person. Yeah, you have to spend a little money, and it's annoying. But then once that thing is done, you're like, okay, I completed something. It's done. I can stop thinking about, you took something off of your plate.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so like it's easy to say, oh, I want to create a concert series. Gosh, that's so like, overwhelming. How do I do that? Well, the first thing is, where would it be? Start researching that. Mm-hmm. Get some information.
Look at other people that are doing it. That's the best way to learn. Look at other people that are doing things and talk to them, or look at how they did it. Like, exactly. There's so much information with that, and that's just research. Anyone can do that.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about it too, because like doing interviews, I'm like, people should interview people more, because like I'm getting so much information for myself on these interviews. I'm like, good thing people listen, because I'm just doing this to get information for myself, and it's really awesome. I'll put it on the podcast too. Hopefully other people will like it. But like, it's funny how you can, how much more, you feel more accomplished if you just do like that one thing and get it done.
Yeah.
So that's totally great. That's great advice.
And actually, I think this is very relevant. I want to mention something that I've discovered recently. It's like this journal called the Best Self Journal. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's really cool. And if we're like, because we're talking about long-term goals, I had a really hard time keeping track of things, because I think of like, okay, I figured out that I need to make small goals if, I want to build something, but I was like, how do I do that? Like, how am I going to like keep track? And this is it's a book, you can buy it. I mean, it's cool. And what it does, it helps you plan them out, and you can keep track. And there's a place where you can kind of like list things that you're going to do each day towards your goal. And it's like, it's really helped me organize. And I don't necessarily, like, I try and write it in every day, but it's really helped me keep track. And I can go back and say, oh, I got all this done as a calendar. And it's been a really incredible tool. There's a lot of tools like this, but this is one that I've found that's helped me kind of always keep sight of a bigger goal I have. And then, like, I'm able to keep track of everything on the way.
That's awesome.
In one place. So that's been a really cool resource.
Cool. Okay, I'll put a link to that too in the show notes, because that sounds like something people might want to check out.
Yeah.
So do you have anything coming up that you want to promote?
Well, actually, I just released a brand new blog called The Productive Musician, which is kind of a new endeavor for me, but it's a place that I'm writing about actually a lot of the things we talked about today. My idea of productivity encompasses everything from the obvious of, time management techniques or email, like ways to be quicker with email or more effective, but also I'm writing about different ways to get us into the right mindset so that we can actually get done what we want to get done. Because I think a lot of that, that can be a big barrier as far as, doing our best work. Mm-hmm. And then also an element of health and wellness, because as musicians, we have to take care of our bodies, obviously, and kind of make sure that we're in the best physical shape so that we can perform at our best. So my idea is just kind of, I think, just to kind of talk about all those things. And some of those things aren't really being talked about, and I want to have a discussion. I want to get it out there and talk about these things, because I think as musicians, we're all having a lot of the same thoughts and the same challenges. And it's very similar to what you're doing. You're talking about a lot of these things that maybe people don't feel comfortable talking about or don't know that anyone else wants to talk about with them. And so that's my goal with
That's great.
Yeah.
I think it's incredible. I'm so excited about that. And I'm definitely going to link that also in the show notes so people can check out your blog.
Thanks, Tracy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation. I've
Thank
really enjoyed it.
you.
I've learned so much, so it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really love what
Awesome.
you're doing. Yeah, it's
Great.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
For
We'll see you
sure.
next time.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.